So, Shalom. I'm pleased to see you all today. We announced that this Shabbat I'll start saying the drashot in our shul in the Shabbat morning, but knowing that there are many who cannot participate, and also maybe you're happy about the English. Is that possible? So I want to share with you some thoughts on Parshat Shavua from the English, okay? In English, okay? So let's begin. I would like to share with you thoughts around words of the Ramban on one of the episodes in Parshat Korach, which I feel somehow reflect something that bothers me very much about our returning to our shul during these Corona days, and I would like to share it with you. After Korach starts his rebellion, he starts forming a coalition. He basically gets the support of most of Am Yisrael. There's a description in the parasha how all of the Eidah, all of Am Yisrael gather around Ohel Moed. Then the Kadosh Baruch Hu turns to Moshe and Aaron and he says to them, Hibadlu mitoch ha'edah hazo, disassociate yourselves from this congregation. Why? Because Achalel tam karaga, God wants to kill everybody. So Moshe Rabbeinu turns to, and Aaron turn to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and they say to him, El Elohei Aruchot L'chol Basar, you are the God of the spirits. The commentators explain that you know what everybody thinks. You know that we can't look at everybody as one crowd. There are different individuals here. Ha'ish echad chet yichtav, one man sins, you'll be angry at everybody. Now, there's an obvious contradiction between what the Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted to do, what Moshe and Aaron said to him. And the Ramban asks this very nicely. If the Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted to punish everybody, obviously they have sinned. But if they have sinned, what does Moshe and Aaron, what do Moshe and Aaron mean by the words that only one man has sinned? Everybody has sinned. So obviously, we have to say, and that is what the Ramban turns to say. We have to assume that everybody has sinned, but on the other hand, we also have to assume that there was a different sin of Moshe, of all the Eidah, of the congregation, and Korach. Meaning there was a sin of everybody, and that's therefore the Kadosh Baruch Hu said, I want to punish everybody. But still, Moshe and Aaron claim that Korach had a greater sin. And what the Ramban actually says, I think if you follow the news in the past few weeks, you perhaps have seen it yourselves, that there were, how does a protest begin? So there's hardcore. The Korach and his men, and Datan, Aviram, and On Ben Pelet, and 250, they were actually the ones who began the protest. They were responsible. And the other ones just joined them. And by joining them, they were on the one hand less committed than them, but they have sinned. And therefore, the Ramban says the Kadosh Baruch Hu could have said to Moshe and Aaron, everybody sinned. They joined Korach, so everybody should be punished. And still Moshe and Aaron could turn to the Kadosh Baruch Hu and say, but you know, Korach's sin is a more severe sin than that of the rest of the congregation. The Ramban even says more than that their claim was, if you will give everybody the same punishment, people will think that everybody sinned the same sin. Now, the Ramban says you should know this is a way a leader should always look at the mistakes of his community. He should always try, even when they sin, to try to find some good point in them to take responsibility. He takes us, the Ramban, to a similar format of work of David HaMelech. In the last chapter of Shmuel Bet, which we have learned in our community, because it talks about the pandemic in the days of David HaMelech, a chapter which very much dialogues with these past few months in our experiences fighting pandemic. And over there, the chapter begins how David HaMelech has sinned by wanting to count Am Yisrael. And then he recognizes his sin and the pandemic comes. And then David turns to the Kadosh Baruch Hu and he says, you know, I'm the one who sinned. And therefore I'm asking you, don't punish them. Now the Ramban asks also over there a very simple question. If they were punished if they were hurt by the pandemic, obviously they did sin. So what does David HaMelech mean that I'm responsible, that I sinned? They also have sinned. And he thinks it's the same format, that David's sin was more severe, but they also have sinned. And therefore, on the one hand, they made a mistake. On the other hand, we can say it's a mistake. Maybe the toll you have to pay doesn't have to be so high. It's a mistake. We can correct mistakes. Okay, I want to talk to you soon about a mistake that I feel that's happening. But it is a mistake, I think. But we can correct mistakes. And the Ramban asked, what was the sin of Am Yisrael there that they were punished by the pandemic? Now I'll read it to you in his words, in Hebrew, so I'll translate. But I want you to hear the words of the Ramban. The Ramban says the following, Ani omer b'derech svara, meaning it's an idea that he has. He cannot prove it from the text, but this is the way he views reading and overall the books of the prophets. Says the Ramban, Haya onesh al Yisrael b'itacher binyan beit habchira. They were punished for not building Beit HaMikdash. Shaya ha'aron olech be'oel, the ark was put in one tent, another tent. It had no place that it was put as its place. Kager ba'aretz, like somebody with no citizenship who wanders around. Ve'ena shvatim mitorim, nobody woke up. Am Yisrael, what didn't bother them? Okay, so the Aron has no place as long as I build my house. And they did not say, Nidrosh et Hashem v'nivnei bayit lishmo. They weren't strong enough in their commitment to building Beit HaMikdash. Now the Torah says, Beit HaMikdash, the shichnot tidreshu, you have to demand it, you have to search for it. It's something you have to request for. Until who's the first one who woke up? This is 300 years after they entered Eretz Yisrael. The first one who woke up and said something's wrong over here was David in the beginning of Shmuel Bet. And David, after he settled down well in his own home, he turned to the prophet Natan and he said to him, I'm in a well-built house, and Aron HaElokim, the ark, b'toch yiriyah, it's in a tent. Now the Kadosh Baruch Hu did not give David permission to build Beit HaMikdash. The Ramban quotes the explanation given in Sefer Divrei Hayamim because he has killed enemies, and a person who has killed others, even if it was a justified killing, should not build the Beit HaMikdash, which is a house of peace. But still the Ramban says that that doesn't take the responsibility off the shoulders of the nation, of Am Yisrael. The leader alone is not responsible. The Ramban says the truth is, Ilu hayu Yisrael chafetzim badavar v'nitoreru bo mitchila. The truth is they should have thought of building Beit HaMikdash way before David's days, in the times of the Shoftim, in the time of the judges, the time of Shaul, or even in the days of David. He says David was told not to build Beit HaMikdash. Nobody said that Am Yisrael cannot build Beit HaMikdash. And David is the man who had the strive to build Beit HaMikdash. And Israel did not learn the lesson from him, how much you have to want Beit HaMikdash. And therefore the Kadosh Baruch Hu was angry at them. And therefore they were hit by the pandemic. But still David could say, please forgive them, because it's a mistake. So we have to correct mistakes. Now, I want to talk about something which I feel is done by the public, and perhaps the type of a mistake, but we can correct it. And I'm referring to the way this chapter in Shmuel Bet and the words of the Ramban meet us in these days of pandemic, of the corona. But really, I want to talk about, not about the pandemic, but about our returning to our shuls. In the first days of the corona, when we had a true fear of the collapse, the possible collapse of our health system, which happened in other countries. And we had a real fear that we cannot give medical treatment to all those who would need it. In those days also, the shuls were places where there were many cases of spreading the virus. In those days, I'm talking about Purim time, I supported and I closed our shul even before the authorities gave that order. Baruch Hashem, The health system did not collapse. A few weeks ago, we even thought that we overcame the pandemic. It's only a virus. It seems today things are more complex, that it is spreading more than we have wanted. But on the other hand, we're still not back to the same point that we were 3 months ago in Purim time. It's true, there are many diagnosed cases, but there's not a drastic change in the numbers of those who are on respirators, of those who are hospitalized. And we have to still be very careful. On the other hand, I think all of us realize, not really understanding fully what's the right thing to do, but all of us realize that Corona, like all other viruses, is here to stay. We're hoping for the day there'll be a vaccination, medication. We can help all who are sick, stop the spread totally. But we have to get used to life of living with it. That's what we really have to do. It may be very uncomfortable, putting a mask on and social distance, but we'll learn how to do that. But looking at our shuls, we came back to shul. And there are limitations, but there is a return to shul. And as you know, the leaders of the community, the rabbi and the vad, I can talk about the vad more than about myself, but big efforts in holding the community together and returning. But we have to remember what the Ramban said to us. The real return to shul is not of the leader, it's the people. And I want to share with you my concern about our return. Do we really return? Do we really want to be in shul? Now, I know I'm talking here to many of the listeners who are what's so-called at risk. And you should all after is what's safe for you. We cannot decide for you. It's your responsibility to decide what's the right thing for you. And we are aware of that, and therefore I'm continuing the Zooms. And therefore we also organize as a community an outdoor minyan, realizing that it's safer. I'm not talking about, obviously, those. I'm talking about those who can return to shul. Because I want to share with you, our return to shul is not full. Look, I'm in shul every day. There are less people who come to shul. And this is not, in my eyes, due to the limitations. We could have a mincha ma'ariv every day. We could have up to 100 people in the shul. I want to tell you that I'm sharing with you the information. Sometimes it's very hard to gather a minyan. This week, I was in shul Wednesday night. There was no minyan for ma'ariv at 8:10. I know one night this week, at 8:30, I had difficulty getting a minyan. Between mincha and ma'ariv, where I give a shir, there are maybe 3 people staying between mincha and ma'ariv. It's very evident that there are much less people who return to shul. And it seems like the commitment to coming to shul has gone down. That's what it seems like. I also assume it's due that many of these street minyanim. Now, I'm not talking about those, I'm repeating again, so nobody should misquote me. Those who are told by their doctors they should avoid coming to shul. And for them, I recommend to go to a street minyan. But we don't need all those street minyanim at every yard, in every corner. I live in a street where there's a street minyan continuing as if the shuls are still closed. And I look at the people who participate. They're not at risk. Most of them, maybe it's 1 or 2, I don't know, but it doesn't look like that. It seems like maybe we find it comfortable to davening in your backyard, in your slippers. But we have to remind ourselves the words of God that a Jew has to say, L'shichnoti dreshu, you have to want to go to the house of God. And it's a value not only to daven in minyan, it's a value to daven in shul. I want to read to you the words of the Rambam in the laws of tefillah. In the 8th chapter, the Rambam begins with the importance of davening in minyan. The Ramban says, Tfilat hatzibur nishma tamid, v'afilu ayu bahen chotim. Even if there were sinners, still the Kadosh Baruch Hu listens to the prayers of the tzibur. And therefore, the Rambam says a person should make an effort to daven in minyan. But he continues and he says that's not enough. Le'olam yashkim adam v'yariv lebet hakneset. You should always make an effort to walk to shul, to go to shul. Why? because prayer in shul is heard even more than in the minyan. She'en tfilato nishmat b'chol et ela b'veit knesset. The reason is very simple. You see this from many Gemarot. Shul is the house of God. There's a difference between davening in your backyard, in your slippers, or if you can go to a place which is made for prayer. Now, in my eyes, if the shul organized a yard minyan, that's like a shul. But that's not what's going on around. I mean, I know that one of the other shuls in our neighborhood, where there are always many minyanim from Meir, they can't gather a minyan because people say, why should I go to shul? But going to shul is a very different davening. And davening in your yard, I've seen how it goes, you know. Cars passing by, people going in and out. I'll be honest with you, when I want to leave my house, sometimes I don't daven in the street meaning, but they're davening. It's not so convenient, it's not so pleasant, you know. We should really want to daven in a place where you're supposed to daven in shul. And the Rambam continues, if you have a shul in your city, if you don't make an effort to go to a place, a makom kavua of davening, you're considered a bad neighbor. You're the neighbor of the shul, but you don't go there. So I wish that we'll get to better days. I wish that all of you can come to shul, Bezrat Hashem. But I do call upon all of ourselves to realize the importance of having a shul, being part of a shul. And I hope that we'll continue making binyanim outdoors for those who need them, but we should not get used to the idea that that's how we're supposed to daven. I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom, and you should all be well and all be healthy, and hopefully we'll see each other all together in Shul. Shabbat Shalom.